Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Sheffield Allsport Diver 1A Black. This watch is available from sheffieldwatches.com for €193. Sheffield originally made the Allsport in the 1970s, and this Allsport Diver 1A Black is an homage to that piece made to modern day specifications. The original Allsport from the 1970s wasn't available in a black version, so this is something new. So firstly, let's look at the travel case that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the specifications of the piece. So the watch comes in this black suede effect travel case, and as you can see on the flap, it has Sheffield Allsport in the original 1970s font, which matches the font on the dial in contrasting silver, stainless steel popper, and inside we've got a suede effect panel, and this goes in between the case back and the bracelet clasp, and it prevents the bracelet clasp rubbing against the case back and scuffing and scratching it, so good attention to detail. I think Sheffield have made the correct choice by using a suede effect travel case rather than the default option of a cardboard or plastic watch box at this price point. With the watch you get this letter, which is signed by Jay, the owner of Sheffield Watches, and he thanks you for purchasing the piece and also gives operating instructions for the movement used, which is the Seiko NH35A automatic. Now, I think this is unacceptable, bearing in mind this is a low-tier piece costing €193. At this price point, one expects to see an owner's instruction manual, either in a booklet or a leaflet, with clear, concise diagrams and instructions in English. It's not good enough just to have a printed out letter. So I'd like to see Sheffield Watches update that with an owner's instruction manual and also a warranty card which gives the term of the warranty, for example 12 months or 2 years, and also details the terms and conditions of the warranty, because this is €193 and that is the industry standard. So with regards to the specifications of the piece, we have a 40mm case diameter. We have a lug-to-lug measurement of 48mm, a thickness of 13.4mm, and a lug width of 20mm. The vintage rubber tropic style strap, which is made from FKM rubber, tapers from 20mm at the lugs down to the buckle and tang. The buckle and tang are made from solid 316L grade stainless steel, which is brushed satin finish and then PV coated black. Now, it's a sterile buckle and tang. At this price point, it's a cost-cutting measure, and I would like to see the buckle engraved with the Sheffield logo in the original font as per the dial and also the travel case I showed you, because that would further enhance it. But it's a good heavy gauge of 316L grade stainless steel, well finished. It doesn't have any sharp edges or burrs, doesn't have sharp corners, and the quality of the brushed satin finishing beneath the PVD coating is good. Quality of the FKM Tropic style strap is very good, and Sheffield deserve credit because they could have used the cost-cutting measure of using a silicone rubber Tropic vintage style strap, but they've used FKM rubber. Fluoro rubber is more expensive than silicone. It's more durable, but it's stiffer, so that's something to bear in mind. Silicone rubber straps are very soft and supple. They don't require any breaking in, but however, they have a tendency to split and crack around the spring bar with regular long-term use. So fluoro rubber is more durable, but the negative is it's slightly stiffer and therefore it takes more breaking in, but FKM fluoro rubber is higher quality and I like it. So it has the original textured pattern and perforations. The perforations are very good because they allow seawater to wick away from the wrist and also sweat and perspiration to wick away from the wrist, so the straps dry out very quickly. And underside you have this groove formation to the squares and the holes, the perforations, so it allows for ventilation and also it allows for moisture to wick away from the wrist. So very aesthetically pleasing, and it does fit the aesthetic of a 1970s heritage reissue or homage to the 1970s Allsports, because that would have had tropic style straps on it. So flat sapphire crystal with blue tinted AR coating. The blue tinted AR coating does an excellent job of reducing the glare and the highly reflective nature of the mirror polished indices and the mirror polished handset. I personally would prefer to see clear AR coating, but this is subjective. Some collectors prefer the blue tint of AR coating. I personally think blue AR works better with blue dial watches. Clear AR works better with all other dial colours, including matte black, as per this style. Sheffield have done a good job. It's difficult when you do a heritage reissue or an homage to a 1970s piece, a vintage piece, to update it to modern day specification but still retain the essence, the original design elements of the original version. But the dial layouts, the size and dimensions and the shape of the indices and also the fonts, the Sheffield Allsport, is exactly the same as the original 1970s Allsport, which this is an homage to. The arrowhead handset is also correctly proportioned as per the original, and it really does give the look of the original 1970s Allsport. I like the shape, which is classic 1970s design, and also the green tone. Originally in the 1970s, tritium was used on dials and hands, but of course it was radioactive and therefore discontinued, and it was succeeded by Luminova and then later succeeded by Superluminova. So the original Allsport from the 1970s used tritium, which had a green tone to it. This does look very similar to the green tone of tritium used in the 1970s on the original Allsport. So Sheffield have done a good job. It's actually made from C3 Superluminova, but rather than looking white in daylight conditions, it has the same characteristic green, and there's a good colour tone match between the handset and also the applied indices. The printing of the white paint on the chapter ring, the minute ticks, is excellent. High definition, it's sharp and crisp, it's not blurry. We've got Japan movement at 6 o'clock because it's powered by the Seiko NH35A, and it's the made in Japan version of the NH35A, not the Malaysian version. And at 6 o'clock, we simply have automatic WR20 ATM because it's a 200 metre water resistant piece. So just the right amount of information, no unnecessary text or specification. The dial doesn't look too cluttered. It looks very similar to the original 1970s Allsport dial. Cyclops magnifier is correctly proportioned and it's 2.5 times magnification, which is correct. The alignment of the Cyclops magnifier is correct over the date window, and it does a good job of magnifying the black Arabic numerals on the white date wheel. So the proportions of the Arabic numerals and also the magnification are good. Now the glossy black bezel looks like it's ceramic, but it's not. It's actually aluminium, and it's been inlaid with C3 Superluminova, which looks white in daylight but glows green in the dark. And they've done a very good job of it because the black PVD coating is very high quality on the aluminium bezel insert. It does look exactly like glossy black ceramic, and the quality of the definition of the minute ticks, the Arabic numerals and the triangle at 12 on the aluminium bezel insert is very good. They've inlaid the C3 Superluminova into the PVD coated bezel to a very high standard. Scalloped 316L grade stainless steel bezel, and it's also brushed satin finished to a good standard before PVD coating. The finishing to the head of the piece is very good. We've got pierced lugs, which does give a vintage aesthetic of a 1970s piece, and it's longitudinally brushed satin finish, but as you can see, the PVD coating is nice and even, so even layers of PVD coating on every facet, even in between the lugs, is done to a good standard. And the lugs are deburred and chamfered to a very good standard, no sharp edges to the tips of the lugs and also the undercut to the case, so it's very well finished, no sharp edges to it whatsoever. The crown guards are also very well finished and PVD coated to a flawless standard. The crown is solid 316L grade stainless steel, coin edge finished, and it's sterile. Now again, this is a cost cutting measure, and at €193 I would expect to see a signed crown, either engraved or embossed with an S for Sheffield in the original font of the Sheffield on the dial and also the travel pouch. And I think this is a disappointment. Sterile crowns are acceptable on pieces below €100, but at €193 we are still in the low tier, but we are at the upper end of the low tier, so I would like to see a signed crown. This is something Sheffield could update with a V2 version of this Allsport Diver 1A Black. So let's test the bezel execution. 120 click unidirectional bezel, as one would expect. It's got a nice firm resistance to it, which feels even all the way through the 360 degrees. It doesn't get tighter or looser. The resistance is solid, it's firm, heavy ratcheting mechanism. One can feel the click spring engaging with the grooves in the underside to the stainless steel bezel, which is PVD coated. No lateral side-to-side play whatsoever. No back play, so it's a nice tight bezel, no play in any direction. I like the loud audible clicks. Feels solid, good mechanism. So let's just check the alignment. One more click. Perfect. The loomed triangle perfectly aligns with the 12 o'clock index and the 60-minute tick on the chapter ring. So this is excellent bezel execution at this price point, €193. No lateral side-to-side play, no back play, perfect alignment, firm, even resistance through the 360 degrees. It's an example to other brands of how to get bezel execution correct in the low tier. So let's test the screw-down crown execution. The screw-down crown provides an effective hermetic seal to 200 meters. Let's test unscrewing it. It feels smooth, but there is some friction. It's not silky smooth, so there is room for improvement. So to put it into perspective, it feels stiffer than a Pagani designed PD1661, which has excellent screw down crown execution. That feels smoother. It doesn't take many turns to unscrew, and it does unscrew smoothly, although one can feel the friction of the threads, the internal thread meshing against the external thread of the stainless steel crown tube, so they could improve upon the quality control and the tolerances of the machining of the threads to better improve it, to make it silky smooth, but it is acceptable. So NH35A in the first position when it's unscrewed, we can manually wind it to its maximum 41 hour power reserve. Nice light resistance to it, one can feel the tension in the mainspring gradually building up. The NH35A is a robust movement and it is an absolute pleasure to manually wind. It's one of my favourite movements, very reliable, very smooth to manually wind. Pulling it out to the first click position is the quick set date complication. And if you look at the Cyclops magnifier, which is 2.5 times magnification, you can see it does an excellent job of magnifying the date window. So one characteristic I really like about the NH35A is each day of the month clicks over with a nice heavy positive click. The indexing of the date complication is solid and reliable, and the alignment is correct. The cutout of the date window in the dial is correct because the alignment of the Arabic numerals on the dates wheel aren't too far to the left or right. They are perfectly central. And the framing is very good. The proportion of the date window is correct. The Cyclops magnifier positioning is also aligned correctly. So absolute pleasure to set the date. Putting it out to the second click position hacks the movements. If you look at the arrowhead second hand, you can see it's now stopped dead. So it's possible to set the time precisely to the second. So we're now in the time setting position. Nice medium resistance to the gearing in the NH35A. Minimal backplay, clockwise and anti-clockwise. Feels like a nice, robust, well-proven workhorse calibre. Pushing it back in, it's got a nice positive click and that restarts the movements. I'm just going to align the dates. So, very good. Let's test screwing it back down. Immediate thread pickup. So the interface between the internal thread of the stainless steel crown and the external stainless steel crown tube threading is good. The pickup is good. But there is some friction in it and one can feel the friction of the rubber O-rings. There are two rubber O-rings, one inside the crown, one inside the crown tube itself, and the two hermetic seals provide 200 meters of water resistance. So one can feel friction, but it's smooth enough, it's acceptable. Right, so I'll show you the case back. Solid 316L grade stainless steel, as one would expect. Now, it does have a bubble back profile to it, and I would like to see Sheffield improve upon this. The coin edge finishing to the circumference is very good. No sharp edges, no burrs to the teeth. They've been chamfered and deburred to a good standard. Concentric CNC lathe tool machining to the circumference, which is very aesthetically pleasing, and the centre section is mirror polished to a good standard, and then engraved with high definition engraving with this scuba diver logo, and we've also got the specification engraved in the back. So the quality of the engraving is good. It's not sharp, it doesn't rub against the wrist, it's not irritating, and the mirror polishing is very good. It does give the aesthetic of a vintage 1970s Allsport, the style of the engraving and the logo, and I like it. It's very aesthetically pleasing, but it is thick, and I think they could make it flatter rather than having this bubble back profile, because this is 13.4 and the sweet spot for a 200 meter water resistant dive piece is 13 millimeters. 13.4 is slightly tall and therefore top heavy on this vintage FKM rubber tropic style strap. So I would like to see it slimmed down by 0.4 millimeters to 13, and that would easily be done by slimming down the case back by 0.4 millimeters. And the bubble back case back does add some thickness to the piece because it does have a flat sapphire crystal. So it's not the crystal giving it the thickness or the head of the piece, it's the bubble back case back. But very smooth and comfortable against the wrist. They've made the correct decision by using quick release stainless steel spring bars rather than conventional spring bars, because with PVD coated lugs, if you use a spring bar tool to remove the rubber strap, there's a risk of scuffing and scratching the PVD coating internally inside the lugs. But by using quick release spring bars, that negates the need of using a spring bar tool. So it's good because there's less risk of scuffing and scratching the internals of the lugs when you're removing the strap to fit an alternative strap. So Sheffield deserve credit for using quick release spring bars on this FKM vintage tropic style strap. It is the correct choice. So I'll give you a wrist shot and you can see how it fits on my 8-inch wrist. Now I'm pleased to report that this vintage tropic style strap does indeed fit my 8-inch wrist. And as you can see, I'll just loosen it off a bit actually, because there's plenty of length on it to the next hole. There we go. So I can engage both keepers. As you can see, there's enough length on this strap to engage both of the sliding keepers. And this makes a refreshing change because often 40mm watches, dive pieces, don't have enough length for collectors with a larger wrist of 8 inches. They cater for the majority of collectors with a 7-inch wrist, but often the straps are a fraction too short. So as you can see, this FKM rubber strap will easily fit an 8-inch wrist, plenty of length on it, and they deserve credit for that because many collectors do have a 7 to 8 inch wrist and they will need a longer strap. Alternatively, if you're going to wear this for diving around a wetsuit, you'll benefit from having the extra length. So proportions are very good. 40mm head of the piece. 48mm lug to lug is the perfect lug to lug measurement. I often refer to this as the sweet spot in my reviews because 48mm will fit you if you have a 6 to 7 inch wrist or a 7 to 8 inch wrist respectively. It is the perfect lug to lug measurement for all wrist sizes. 20mm is the correct lug width for a 40mm head of the piece. So the proportions of this Allsport Diver 1A Black are correct. They've also made the correct decision by using a flat sapphire crystal. I like the edge of it because it projects slightly above the aluminium bezel insert. We've got a nice bevel to the edge which catches the light, does look very aesthetically pleasing, and nice glossy finish to the PVD coating which contrasts very well with the white minute ticks and also the Arabic numerals which are inlaid with C3 Superluminova. Quality of the PVD coating in black is very good, and the layers of PVD coating are even on the flanks, the tops of the lugs and in between the lugs. It doesn't look darker or lighter. Every facet of the head of the piece, including the bezel, is PVD coated to the same colour tone of black, and that's very good. So I think it's very aesthetically pleasing. It looks like a military issued piece. It has that aesthetic because it's all black, and I like that. So I think that it does capture the essence of the original Allsport from the 1970s, but of course modern day specification, it uses sapphire crystal rather than acrylic or mineral crystal, and of course this is C3 Superluminova rather than tritium. So tropic style strap, very comfortable, not as soft and supple as silicone rubber, but with breaking in it will become very comfortable and of course more durable, and I think it's better. I think FKM fluoro rubber is a preferential choice to silicone rubber which just doesn't last as long. The only thing I would like to change is the blue hue of the AR coating. I think clear AR coating would improve the legibility and the clarity of the dial, but the blue AR does do a good job of reducing the reflection and the glare on the mirror polished handset and applied indices. So proportions of the indices and the handset are correct as per the original Allsport from the 1970s. It really does look like the original from the 1970s, but with modern day specification and modern day proportions, 40mm. Right, so I'll just do up the strap and then we'll do a lume test and see how the C3 Superluminova performs when it's charged up to the absolute maximum. So as always, I'm going to use my 100 UV LED torch to charge it up to the absolute peak. Right, so that's now fully charged, and as you can see, it has not disappointed. We're clearly looking at 5 to 6 layers of C3 Superluminova, so no cost-cutting measures, and Sheffield deserve full credit for that, because they could have used 3 to 4 layers as a production cost-cutting measure. I like that the green tone of C3, the colour tone, perfectly matches on the aluminium bezel insert, the dial, and also the handset. And also the Arabic numerals on the dial are fully loomed. The 12, 9 and 6 are fully loomed as well. So this is excellent performance at this price point, and they deserve credit because the proportions of the arrowhead hands are very good. They're the same shape and dimensions as the original, the same proportions, so one can clearly differentiate between the arrowhead triangle on the hour hand and the syringe style minute hand, as you can see. So very aesthetically pleasing. I like the shape of the vintage indices, and they make a refreshing change from using the default option of a Rolex Submariner dial layout, which is very popular, or a Tudor Black Bay dial layouts. This is original to the 1970s Allsports, the dial design and the handset, and I think that they've done a good job of replicating that, of producing an homage or a heritage reissue of it. And of course it's got the modern day enhancement because the aluminium bezel insert is fully inlaid with C3 Superluminova. This is something the original didn't have. The original did have an aluminium bezel insert, but it wasn't inlaid with tritium lume. It was just white paint, and this is very good. So I think that they've done a good job of updating it, because the 60-minute ticks are like a mil-sub bezel insert, and they do look similar to the minute ticks that we used on the original 1970s Allsport. And as you can see, it's not fading, so performance is good. The exciter is glowing brightly on the handset, the indices, and also the inlay in the aluminium bezel insert, which is PVD coated. Nice colour tone match, and the green C3 does match the tritium lume, which was used in the 1970s, which also had a radioactive green tone to it, but it was very similar in tone, so they've done a good job of matching it, and it really does look like a heritage reissue of that version. So very good performance, so I'm very pleased with it. Right, so let's discuss the movement used. You'll all be familiar with the Seiko NH35A Automatic, which is made in Japan. Now, the NH35A is made by Seiko in two plants, one in Malaysia and the other in Japan. This is the Japan version, and it says on the dial Japan movements, and that is indeed correct. I can confirm that this actually is a Japan-made NH35A, not a Malaysian-made. So the NH35A was first released in 2011. So at this stage, it's a reliable, well-proven workhorse movement. It has 24 joules, and it runs at 21,600 vibrations per hour and a frequency of 3 Hz. It has hand binding and hacking, which is used for complications, and the 41-hour power reserve is perfectly acceptable. The stated accuracy of the NH35A is -20 to +40 seconds per day, so a rather wide accuracy range. However, I'm pleased to report that this one has been well regulated by Sheffield, and it's running consistently at +6 seconds per day. +6 is very good, and it's well within the -20 to +40 stated accuracy. So reliable, well proven, it's robust and accurate when it's regulated. +6 is good enough, 41 hours is good enough, and I really like the quick set complication because it has nice solid indexing, and also it's a pleasure to manually wind. It has hacking and hand winding, so there are no negatives to the NH35A other than it's a thick movement, and therefore often, as is the case with this piece, in the low tier, Chinese-made watches have bubble-back case backs in order to clear the rotor. And the other negative is they tend to have a deep rehort because it's necessary to clear the cannon pinion, because the NH35A has a tall stack height for the handsets. The cannon pinion is tall, and in order to provide adequate clearance between the second hand and the underside of the crystal, they need to use a deep rehort. So often the dial is deep away from the sapphire crystal. But I want to give credit to Sheffield here, because yes, it does have the characteristic deep rehorts of an NH35A powered piece, but they've black PVD coated the rehorts, and this is something I would like to see other brands do. They've made the correct decision, because when you have a brushed satin finished rehorts, which is deep, it acts like a mirror, and what happens is when the light enters the sapphire crystal, it bounces around the rehorts. If it's brushed satin finish, it acts like a mirror, and it reflects 360 degrees of light around the dial, and it adds to the reflection of the sapphire crystal, the glare. But by having a black PVD coated rehorts beneath the sapphire crystal, it's matte rather than being glossy, and therefore it reduces the glare, and it's noticeable at an oblique angle. When I tilt this piece at an oblique angle, you can see that it is reflective, but the lack of brushed satin finishing in silver on the rehorts, because it's black PVD coated rehorts, it actually does a good job. It creates a shadow around the chapter ring rather than being reflective on the dial, and it looks good. It matches the aesthetic of this being like a military issued piece, because everything else is black. We've got the crown, the bezel, and also the head of the piece are all black PVD coated. The rehort is black PVD coated, so it looks good. They made the correct decision because they haven't black PVD coated the stainless steel bezel. The reason is the stainless steel bezel, the case back. The stainless steel case back rubs against the wrist constantly, and the problem is if you PVD coat the case back, it will rub off because it's constantly in friction, in contact with the wrist and getting rubbed, and it quickly wears. So it's the one part of the watch that is in contact with the wrist that you do not want PVD coated, and some brands make the mistake of PVD coating case backs, and of course it inevitably wears off quickly and then it looks abhorrent. But by mirror polishing it, it's very comfortable, but also it's not going to wear off. So Sheffield have made the right decision. They've used a mirror polished case back, not PVD coated it, but the rest of the watch, which isn't in constant contact with the wrist, is black PVD coated, and it is done to a high standard. So last I'll summarise the piece. What do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, the watch should meet two criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price points. So this is a low tier piece. The price point is €193. It is excellent quality. The C3 Superluminova is 5 to 6 layers. It's excellent. Bezel execution is 10 out of 10. No lateral side-to-side play, no back play, perfect alignment, even all the way through to 360 degrees. There is room for some improvement with regards to the machining tolerances of the screw-down crown. It's not silky smooth, but it is smooth enough. It is acceptable. 200 meters is good specification. Quality of the inlay of the C3 Superluminova to the PVD coated aluminium bezel insert is good. So the quality of the finishing and the PVD coating is excellent throughout, and the FKM rubber strap is also good quality. So no negatives to it whatsoever. I would just like to see the crown signed and also the buckle signed in order to enhance the piece at €193. So I'm going to declare the quality excellent, but the value as okay. I'm not going to say the value is good or excellent because it needs refinement. It needs the crown to be better executed, signed, and also the buckle signed. Then I would upgrade it to good or excellent value. So I hope you've enjoyed my review of the Sheffield Allsport Diver 1A Black. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you for watching.